So we saw Draupadi's marriage, right? And I think the only bit that I forgot to mention last week at the end was that in some versions it said Krishna did, or in some versions it said Narad Muni did, but basically when the Pandavas before going to the Swayambar met that Yaksha, and that Yaksha told him a whole lot of stories, one of the key themes that the Yaksha told all the stories about is how if two brothers fight over the same woman, then it causes a lot of disharmony within the family. And then that's something that is not really easy to mend. So if you fight over money, possibly, even that's not easy to mend, but a little bit easier. It's not a person. But when it becomes a person and you feel rejected by a person, then that scar can go quite deep. So Narad Muni comes and says that even though Draupadi is married to all 5 brothers, they would live within a system. And the system was she would be a wife to one brother for the entire year. And so during that year, the other 4 brothers did not treat her like a wife. They treated her like sister-in-law. And then again, I mentioned this last week also, there was this whole thing about her going through fire to get purified every time she goes from one person to another person. And so when the 1 year was over, she would go through fire. And then for the next, so it was Yudhishthira the first year, Bhim the second year, Arjuna the third year. And so it was very, very strict. And Narad Muni emphasized that it had to be followed without any kind of compromise whatsoever. And so the rule was that if Draupadi was for that year Yudhishthira's wife, and if any of the other 4 brothers walked into the bedroom at any point in time during that 1 year, they had to go into exile for a year. And so this rule becomes important because Arjuna does for that reason. So this emphasis on the Pandavas remaining united and this emphasis on living a life of discipline. And so I think in today's world, many times even people who have been listening to the recordings of the Mahabharata. So I end up talking about Mahabharata all week long because somebody or the other will say, you know how you said this in the, or in the story how this happened. There was one cute lady who told it very hard that she had to marry all 5 of them. Like she was so worried about Draupadi, like how she's going to live with all 5 of them. Even though of course we know the story, this is not news, but still like you should have seen her face, like it was such sympathy for Draupadi that, how could she manage 5 husbands? and this comment gets made often enough that one's hard enough to manage than to manage 5. But when these things were done, there was still discipline. And I think that's what we need to keep in mind. It wasn't licentiousness. And it wasn't overindulgence. There was incredible amount of discipline practiced. Even when you see in the Quran, when the Muslim men marry more than one wife, there's a whole lot of rules. Anything you buy for one wife, you have to buy for all your wives. Anything you do with one wife, you have to do with all the wives. Like there's a discipline in it. It's not just like, I do what I want to do. Only then can it work. And so discipline is the cornerstone of any relationship working or any system working. So this rule was set up, and then so I mentioned Duryodhana's already gone back to Hastinapur. The marriage happens and it becomes common news that the Pandavas are alive. Duryodhana is furious. Duryodhana tells his father that, there's no way we should accept them back into the kingdom, and I should still be made the king. At this point, there's an interesting discussion between the Dhritarashtra, Karna, and Duryodhana. And here we see how Karna's virtues come out. Yeah. So Duryodhana once again tries to think of some deceitful way to get rid of the Pandavas. And at that point, Karna says very clearly, we are Kshatriyas. If we have a grievance with a Kshatriya, we settle it by making our grievance known and fighting. And they would fight to the death. So like really grievance is solved because the other person gets killed in the battle. And so here you see how Karna is true to being a Kshatriya because that's how he wanted to solve his problems. So by birth, he doesn't really know who he is. But by temperament, he is a Kshatriya. You can see it in the way he carries himself, in his skillfulness of warfare, and even in the way he thinks of how to solve problems. He says, let's fight it out. And he even tells Duryodhana, you've already tried deceitful ways and it didn't work. We tried to poison beam, it didn't work. We built the house of flags, it didn't work. Why don't we just settle it once and for all? Now, the point here is that this is excellent advice that Karna is giving Duryodhana. Karna is not saying, give the Pandavas the kingdom, be the better person, give up your jealousy. Although that is what Bhishma tells him, what Vidur tells him, what Dronacharya tells him. So this is all going to happen now. Well, let's let it happen now. So Vidur comes and says to the Dhritarashtra before even Duryodhana walks into the court, or maybe Duryodhana was there already, it doesn't matter, and says, congratulations, the Kuru house has won Draupadi as a daughter-in-law. The Dhritarashtra is overjoyed thinking Duryodhana won the Sayamvar and that Draupadi is coming as Duryodhana's wife. And he's like, send this gifts and, arrange this palace for her to live in and plan this party and spread the news. And we should welcome her like this. And so he gives this whole rundown of gifts and instructions and welcoming and everything. And then Vidur says it was Arjuna who won the competition. But he said Kuru, right? And Arjuna is a Kuru. So he wasn't, but at that point, the Dhritarashtra didn't realize that Arjuna was alive. But it was still like, see how happy you are that Draupadi is coming, and those gifts should still go, and that welcome should still happen because now he said it has to adhere. So Vidur also knew how to handle his brother. And then the Duryodhana says, I want the kingdom. The Dhritarashtra calls. This is where you see these good points in the Dhritarashtra. Our good can be there, and then it's kind of like, like you can have sugar in water, but it's so diluted that you don't really taste sweetness. It's like, you'd rather have plain water or you have a proper drink, but this diluted version is like, and that's what you see with the Dhritarashtra. So he's got so much jealousy in him, and he's got so much attachment to Duryodhana that actually he wants to give the kingdom to Duryodhana. But he says, let's ask Bhishma, Drona, and Vidur because they are the well-wishers of Hastinapur. Now this is, if you want to ask somebody who's a well-wisher, then you should follow. So he had that respect to ask them, and he had the good sense to know that they were well-wishers and they knew better than him, but he wasn't able to follow. So he had bits of him that were definitely good. And then I won't say it's bad, but he had weakness, which didn't allow these good things to really flourish. And that's all of us. We have good qualities, but will the good qualities in us flourish? Well, it will depend on how much weakness we have and how much we give in to the weakness. Now, we see this even with people who have talent. Sometimes with a musical instrument or a sport, like they're really talented, but weakness, they don't practice, or they don't listen to the teacher when the teacher's instructing. And so then that it doesn't flourish. That talent or that skill doesn't flourish. So we have, all of us have virtues, all of us have talents, all of us have intelligence. But when will those talents, virtues, and intelligence flourish in us? Discipline. The strength to be able to, literally, it's to be able to let the intellect override the mind and not give in to desire when we know that the desire is not conducive. Like we know we have the desire, we can be aware of the desire, but when we know that that desire is going to hurt us, just to not give in to that desire. Okay, so this is when first Bhishma talks, and Bhishma says the kingdom should be given to Yudhishthira, and he gives a whole lot of rules. Firstly, it belongs to Yudhishthira. Dhritarashtra was never the king. He was standing in till Yudhishthira was old enough to take over the kingdom after Pandu. Secondly, Yudhishthira is loved by the people, and he is a fit and competent and deserves to be king because he has the right skill set and personality type in order to be king. So he qualifies, it belongs to him, and the people love him. And then lastly, Bhishma says, and Pandu is no more, but he was your brother. And so your duty is to love them like a father. And why would you take away something that is rightfully his? And so here in terms of personal dharma, the dharma of playing a role as a parental figure to Yudhishthira. And so this one maybe might be the least, it's the most emotional reason. Even though there's logic to it, like if you are a guardian, then to do what's right by the person, right? If you're a parent, do right by the kid. If you're a guardian, if you're a teacher, do right by the student. So here Dhritarashtra is the guardians of the Pandavas. And so in fulfilling his duty as their guardian, to be fair and to give them what's theirs. But also it's like, he's your brother, didn't you love him? Wouldn't you love his children? Becomes emotional as well. And the thing is, Dhritarashtra really did love Pandu. As siblings go, there was an immense fondness, but it didn't pass on to the kids because the attachment to his kids overshadowed that love that he would have necessarily felt. Although very often in families, you do see that it's our kids, right? Like parents happily, siblings of parents are considered second mothers, second fathers. You find that happen often enough, and you find it not happen often enough as well. So really it's the sentiment of the person in how much they include and are giving in love. And so for us to check also, how small is our world of who we love? And how willing are we to open our hearts to expand beyond me and mine? So all three of them, so Bhishma gives this, Drona also concurs that this is the best thing for Hastinapur. They also add that, Drupada is now an ally. So it makes Hastinapur powerful to have that ally. Krishna is the Pandavas' ally. Politically speaking also, don't burn bridges where you're going to end up regretting it. And so Drona gives a much more political point of view than a dharmic point of view, but also reiterates that it's dharmic to give the kingdom. And then when it's Vidur's turn to talk, Vidur says this one line, which is repeated in the Mahabharata very often, repeated in the Bhagavad Gita as well. Where there is Krishna, there is victory. And that's the line, translation. It's given in Sanskrit in the Mahabharata. It's the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita, verse 700, end of chapter 18, 701, depending on if you count the extra verse in the Gita or not, but it's Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, where there is Krishna. And then in the Gita, it's where there is Arjuna as well. There will be Shri, wealth, Dana, so Shriya, fame, prosperity, Dana, wealth, and Vijaya, victory. So where there is Krishna, there will be victory. Vidur is telling Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. Who stood next to Arjuna? Krishna, already at the wedding, right? It's the news has gone far and wide. Krishna was at the wedding, and Krishna had already taken the side of the Pandavas, made a stand, made it public knowledge that he stood by the Pandavas. Also, Krishna is very fond of Draupadi, and so now Draupadi being married to Arjuna would make Krishna an alliance to the Pandavas, even in terms of politics. Krishna is Kunti's nephew. Again, he would be the ally of the Pandavas. But it was more by choice than it was by relationships that Krishna. So Vidur says that from the very start, so this is even before anything has ever happened, Vidur has made this statement, where there is Krishna, there is victory. And so why would you go against Krishna, which means the Pandavas? And if we do, Hastinapur will be destroyed. So you see this happen a few times in the Mahabharata. We see it happen a few times in the Bhagavatam as well. There's a foreshadowing of what will happen. Go against Krishna and the lineage will be destroyed. Hastinapur will be destroyed. So Dhritarashtra hears it, he understands it. Duryodhana hears it, he understands it. But weakness within us and desire within our hearts is a very interesting thing. We hear it, we understand it, we believe it. It's not even that we don't believe it, huh? It's like somebody who drinks or somebody who smokes and you tell them, this is going to kill you. They hear it, they understand it, they believe it. Do they go ahead and drink? Yeah. So many. Few will stop. Most don't stop, huh? Even with somebody who's, performing something adharmic, maybe they evading taxes, or maybe they illegally forging documents, or maybe they something, yeah. And you tell them, if you get caught, you'll go to jail, you will lose everything, you will da-da-da. Do they believe you that that's the consequences of their action? Yes. Yeah. We know that to be the consequence of the action. Does it stop them? Some of us it stops. Some of us it doesn't stop. They go ahead and do. And same with, relationships. If it's a marriage and if you do this, it will destroy your house. Do they go ahead and do it? Often. You'll bring shame to your parents, you'll lose your kids' respect, you You tell them the whole spiel. They understand. It's not even that they don't understand. It's not even that we don't understand consequences. We still do. Okay, those are very big things, right? Having affairs and forging government documents and dying from an addiction. So we'll tell someone, don't say anything. If you say anything, the other person's going to get upset, or the other person's going to get triggered. The other person's going to get insecure. The other person, do we go ahead and say it? There's one of the youngsters that used to come help out here. Never woke up on time. Just never woke up on time. And she would promise profusely, like, there would be some big function. Guruji is coming, Swamiji is coming. You have to be here at this time. You have this responsibility, and this. I swear, I promise. But you don't wake up. Are you going to actually come? I'm going to come. Did she wake up? Did she want to? Did she know the consequences of not waking up? I was so angry. Fortunately, I had a backup plan. But still, literally did not speak to her for a month. If you muck up when Guruji is here, there's going to be consequences. We know consequences, and we still go ahead with doing the action. Why? Guruji says, we don't believe it will happen to me. We know that the consequence exists, but for some way we think we'll get away with it. Or in that moment of doing the action, we don't care. We don't care what the consequence is. We just want to do the action so much. The problem is when the consequence comes, we care. While doing the action, we're very brave. When the consequence comes, we're not necessarily so brave. We see this in Duryodhana. So does he go against the Pandavas? Yep, he goes against the Pandavas. So Bhishma, Drona, and Vidur all advised Dhritarashtra not to give Duryodhana the kingdom, make Yudhishthira king. And when should Yudhishthira have been the king? Then and there. He's coming back married. He's come out of hiding. Give him kingdom. Duryodhana gets very angry. The three of them leave. He complains to his father. Although before the three of them leave, Dhritarashtra says, yes, he will make Yudhishthira king. The minute Duryodhana hears his father say he will make Yudhishthira king, he's so angry. So when Yudhishthira and the Pandavas and Draupadi do come to, so Vidur is sent to bring them and to bring them back properly to Hastinapur. It's the reunion between Vidur and the Pandavas is very sweet. Vidur has so much love for the Pandavas. And just like Dhritarashtra is Pandu's brother, and so they his nephews, Vidur is Pandu's brother. And so the Pandavas are his nephews. And you see this difference. For Vidur, Pandu's kids are his kids. For Dhritarashtra, Pandu's kids are not his kids. So they brought back to Hastinapur, and Dhritarashtra announces the kingdom will be divided into half. Hastinapur will go to Duryodhana, and Indraprastha will go to Yudhishthira. So now Indraprastha was a part of the land which is desert and mountainous, and it reaped no produce. So it was land that could not be farmed, land that could not be built on, land that could not be, so terrain that was too harsh for anyone to live in, and so not yet used. But when this announcement is made, Bhishma and Vidur look at each other like, this wasn't what we discussed. And at this point, Bhishma could have said something, but he doesn't. I'm not sure why he doesn't. Maybe he's just really hoping everything works out. Or maybe now that it's said and he wasn't the king, maybe he felt he didn't have a right to. I'm not sure exactly why. Technically, he does have a right to. Because Dhritarashtra is not the king, and Bhishma is the one who was in charge of overseeing and looking after the kingdom until the rightful king, Yudhishthira, takes over. So technically, he does have a right to speak, but for some reason, Bhishma doesn't say anything. He notices, and I think this is when he really notices that there's this divide between the Kauravas and the Pandavas. Up until now, Bhishma didn't really notice it. He really thought things were fine. That sure, kids fight with each other, but it wasn't serious. Parents can sometimes not realize, right, just how deep the wounds of the children are against each other with sibling rivalry. And then, of course, as a parent, you kind of just hope they grow out of it. So possibly Bhishma was just hoping that they would outgrow the pettiness. But Bhishma doesn't say anything. Yudhishthira, out of respect, doesn't say anything. So Krishna is there at that point in time. Krishna comes with the Pandavas to Hastinapur, and they go to Indraprastha, that land that was given to them. And this is where you see Krishna in the avatar, that in all the avatars that come, in no avatar is Vishnu or the Lord as obvious that he's the Lord. In Ram avatar, he really behaved like a prince. But here, what does Krishna do? He calls Indra, summons Indra. You see this a lot in this section of the Mahabharata. Indra appears, Agni appears, Vayu appears. These are devatas. We don't see them, but they could see them. Arjuna talks to them. This must be one of the big differences between Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and Kali Yuga. We in Kali Yuga, we can't see them. We can't see Varuna, we can't see Indra, we can see the sun, but we can't see Surya Devata. We see the river Ganga, but we can't see the goddess of the river. But Krishna summons Indra and says, make this land fertile. It's like how you go to the restaurant and then you order 7 dishes. And then if you VIP, if you're traveling first class, you order something even ridiculous, and then everyone's running around and they get it to you in record-breaking time because, you are VIP. You can't get more VIP than Krishna. So he commands all the devatas, make the land fertile. Land that has been lying barren for like hundreds of years. There's just rocks and mountains and desert. Make it fertile. All the devatas get to work. And Indraprastha becomes a very, very, very fertile piece of land. Rivers start flowing and plants start growing and the wind starts blowing coolly, and it's literally like, how animated movies where Krishna puts his foot and then the grass grows. In these cartoons now that you see, you'll see this. And the reason the cartoons depict it that way is because really this is what Krishna said, it happens. Literally where he puts his foot, grass grows, flowers blossom, birds start chirping. And so from having no ecosystem except this horrible desert ecosystem and stones and rocks, Indraprastha becomes this flourishing land. And because Yudhishthira is very, very dearly loved, so like it was desert, nobody lived there. They go set up house, so to say, in Indraprastha. Then you need a praja, you need a population. So many, 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 many people migrated from all over. Many of them from Hastinapur because they already loved Yudhishthira, but actually from all over, people migrated to to Indraprastha, but like Dubai nowadays, right? Dubai was desert, now it's built up and everybody migrates to Dubai. Kind of a little bit like that. Of course, I'm not saying that they, the Pandavas, but that kind of a setup. That, and the more people that came, the more skills, talents, the city was planned and it blossomed. So now this next section is a little bit interesting. So first thing that happens is Draupadi is with Yudhishthira this year. The first year of Draupadi's marriage to the Pandavas, she's with Yudhishthira. They've moved to Indraprastha. They're living in the palace. People are just starting to populate Indraprastha, and this one Brahmana comes and tells Arjuna, please help me. My cattle have been stolen. So Arjuna is like, right. And you know, this was like for Arjuna, you tell, like, he can't not do it. Like you give Arjuna this challenge of, you know, catch a thief. It's like now for Arjuna, it's like this game or this challenge or this, he has to do it. So he goes running to find his bow and arrow, which is the equipment he needs to be able to catch the thief. And it's in Yudhishthira's room. Now, I don't know who put it there. It was definitely a mistake. It should not have been in Yudhishthira's room. It's Arjuna's bow and arrow. So Arjuna stands at the door of Yudhishthira's room thinking, now what do I do? That's right, he can't go in. Remember the rules. So he paced up and down 2-3 times and he thinks, okay, if I don't catch the thief, this Brahmana is going to go and tell everyone that Yudhishthira can't protect Brahmanas in Indraprastha. This is terrible. We can't have this happening. And so whatever the consequences, I will face it. So he knocks. Please note, he doesn't barge into the room. He knocks. It's also mid-morning. Yeah. Yudhishthira is fully clothed, Draupadi is fully clothed. They, you know, they like, I don't know, sorting out laundry or something very everyday kind of thing, whatever it is they're doing. They're discussing the weather, they're sipping their chai. It's like nothing. And Arjuna knocks. Yudhishthira says, come in. Arjuna says, basically bows down, acknowledges them, goes straight to the cupboard, takes out his bow and arrow and runs out of the room. And Yudhishthira thinks, what's with Arjuna? That nothing else, right? Nothing, no other thought comes into Yudhishthira's head. He's just thinking, why is he in such a hurry? You know, he could have had chai with us. That's what Yudhishthira is thinking. Arjuna goes off, he catches the thieves, he returns the cows to the Brahmanas, and he comes back to the palace. He bows down to Yudhishthira and he says, give me your permission to take your leave. And Yudhishthira's like, where are you going? And he said, I entered your room. I have to leave for a year of exile. And this is, you know, Yudhishthira, who is so disciplined, who is so dharma. You see how compassionate he is. Yudhishthira is like, no, 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 that doesn't count. Because, you know, I'm like the eldest brother who's like your father, and a child can walk into their parents' room at any given point in time. That's totally acceptable. And you had to get your weapon and you had to get the cows. And so, no, 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 it doesn't count. And then this is, again, the Pandavas' love for each other is incredible. So you see Bhim also saying, yeah, it doesn't count. And Nakula and Sahadev saying, no, you don't have to go, just stay. And this is where you see Arjuna's, you know, we always talk about how Yudhishthira never wavers from dharma, but actually, maybe with the exception of insulting Karna, Arjuna also never wavers from dharma. He does when it comes to Karna. Everyone else he's really sweet to. In fact, when Arjuna spoke to Duryodhana, he spoke very nicely. The only person he was really mean to was Karna. something there. But otherwise, you see this Arjuna also doesn't waver. So Arjuna only says, a rule's a rule, and It has to be followed. I entered your room. I have to leave for exile. At this point, Yudhishthira starts crying and tells Arjuna, I will miss you too much. You can't go. Arjuna also starts crying and says, a rule's a rule. Give me your blessings to leave. So you see this adherence that Arjuna understood. 5 brothers, 1 wife, rules have to be followed. Otherwise, it will cause too much confusion. And there can be no leniency. Yes, there was an intention. Yes, it was circumstances. Yes, Yudhishthira forgave me, but there should be no leniency, no compromising it. And that's what will help the 5 of us live together peacefully. And so that adherence that all 5 of them were so determined to do right by each other and to do right by Draupadi. So Arjuna goes, and turns out to be an amazing trip for Arjuna. Arjuna, extremely good looking, caught many princesses' attention. Princesses, Apsaras, Gandharvas, Nagas. And this is it. He meets a Naga princess. Naga princesses, we don't even know what the species is, right? We've never seen Naga princesses. Only in Bollywood movies, we know that snakes can become women or men, can go back to being snakes. For us, it's like this mystical creature, like a vampire or a werewolf with made up, but it can't be made up because here he is marrying a Naga princess who basically kidnaps him because she falls in love with him and takes him to the Naga world. And Arjuna's too cool. So he's been kidnapped and taken to this world. He's there in this new, so I should also say, this 1 year that Arjuna is in exile, he does so much satsang. It's so beautiful, the way he lives his day. He wakes up, he does havan, he meets with saints and sages, he gives in charity. Then he goes sightseeing. But like the first 5 hours of the day is full. Tapas, yagna, satsang, charity. Just every day. It's like this is his routine. So, and even when she kidnaps him, he's doing Sandhya Vandan in the river. And she sees him and she gets besotted, and so she takes him into the Naga world. And when he realizes he's there in the Naga world, there are Brahmanas doing havan. So he sits down and he does havan with the Naga Brahmanas. Only when the havan is finished, he's noticed this girl who is looking at him, but he does havan first. Then he looks at her and he says, you really have guts, because obviously you've brought me into this world. And then something he says to her, he compliments her determination or her persistence or her. And so when she says, marry me, Arjuna's reply is that in the 1 year, he is supposed to be celibate, so he cannot. But then she clarifies that it's only towards Draupadi and not any other woman. So that kind of frees Arjuna up. And he then marries 13 people in this 1 year. But this Naga princess's name is really fun. The Bhaviyar kids have a lot of fun with it. Her name is Ilupi. After that, he meets a yaksha. He frees many yakshas. He fights many battles. He meets devatas. But mainly, he meets Santa Mahatma. He does satsang. And then the whole trip, Arjuna is thinking about Krishna. And the plan is to do yatra. So he goes to many holy places. And the aim is to go to Dwarka last and spend time with Krishna. And even though he is thinking about Krishna with a lot of love, his mind also goes to Subhadra. Who's Subhadra? Krishna's younger sister. And so stories go around. In those days, you didn't have Instagram, so you couldn't go check their profile. but stories were spread about how beautiful or how handsome somebody was. And Arjuna's fame was so much that in conversation, if you wanted to compliment someone, you would say, "Oh, you think you and Arjuna, do you?" Like that he's that good looking. Or if somebody was supposed to be proficient in something, like if somebody was skilled at running or if somebody was good at cooking, then the comment that would be, "You, the Arjuna of cooking." And that was just everywhere in India. That Arjuna's fame was that much, that his name was household. Mhm. Even parents would scold their kids, "Don't think you some great Arjuna." Like his name was used that often. Um, he was that well known, and his looks and his skills were that well known. And then Draupadi's beauty was well known, and Subhadra's beauty was very well known. Mm. So Subhadra is the sister to Krishna and Balram was a very, very overly protected older brother. And nobody outside family members were allowed to see Subhadra. So then even more, when her beauty is described, it gets described even more because she is kept in secret. Now, of course, like remember even the beauty of Draupadi, when desire gets created, the beauty of Subhadra was described to Arjuna and desire got created. So Arjuna would think of Krishna, then he'd think of Subhadra. Then he'd think of Krishna, then he'd think of Subhadra. This is why we like Arjuna, because this is us as well. We also think of Krishna, and then we think of some faltu thing. I'm not saying Subhadra's faltu, but you know what I'm saying, right? We'll think of something, some appointment we have to go to, some meeting we have to have, or some shopping that we have to do, or some lunch we have to attend. Then we think of Krishna. Then again, we will think of, should exercise more. Think of Krishna, then we go again and we'll think about. It's already August. Time really flies. We'll have to start Diwali cleaning soon. Think of Krishna, come back to to-do list. Think of Krishna, come back to this person is so annoying. And then have full long conversation in our heads about annoying person. Then we think of Krishna and then, so we're just like Arjuna. Arjuna's on yatra. He's on exile for 1 year. He's got no responsibilities. He's thinking of Krishna. Got married a few times in between, but he's thinking of Krishna. But Arjuna also was incredible at diplomatic relationships and foreign relationships. So amongst the 5 Pandavas, it was Arjuna that built up the maximum number of alliances. And one of the ways he did this was he traveled. This was the first of his travels, and this was because he was exiled from Indraprastha for a year. But after this, he'll travel many times. One, because he has wives in many of these cities, and he makes promises to see them, so he has to deliver his promises. 2, he travels to maintain relationships with other kingdoms. And the reason this is important is because when the war does happen, the entire Pandava army is predominantly Arjuna's relationship with people. So Yudhishthira is the king, but it was Arjuna that built up relationships with other kingdoms. So in this whole scene of where he is in exile, the way he is described and the way he conducts himself is quite elaborate. I don't think we need to go into it as that much. Except that the better we know Arjuna, the better we relate to him in the Bhagavad Gita. Hmm. So he gets to Dwarka, and even the description of Dwarka is so beautiful. Dwarka was like a perfectly planned town. And the first person he meets is Krishna. And he tells Krishna he's interested in Subhadra. But Balram wants Subhadra to marry Duryodhana. This is also interesting. There's how many princes in the whole of the land? There would have been like 300 princes. And then Arjuna falls in love with Subhadra. And who does her brother wanted to marry? Like arch enemy. Isn't it interesting that we do this? There's 7.8 billion people on this planet. But who will we bump into? At the shopping mall, at the airport, at the hospital, who we bump into? It's interesting how our worlds gravitate, bringing only those people to us. Which ones? The ones we really don't like. And the ones we really, really like. Have you noticed this? Like, how come we're not meeting other people? How come we meet these same people again and again? Even by accident, when we meet people, who are we meeting? And, here in Hong Kong and Shamsachuri, you'll bump into 300 people on the road, but you live anywhere. You live in Greece, you live in America, you live in Australia, same thing will happen. We create our world of people we like, people we don't like. And they're the ones that keep turning up. Why? Because actually we don't need numbers. We just need to deal with traits. What do I mean? So the person that we don't like will have a particular trait. Maybe they are short-tempered. Maybe they are jealous. Maybe they are possessive. Maybe they are dominating. So in my interaction with this person, actually it's got nothing to do with the person. It's got to do with how do I deal with this trait. So something in me gets provoked. Yeah. I can't stand jealousy. I get provoked by this trait. Or I get intimidated by a particular trait. Maybe somebody is dominating, somebody is possessive, somebody is calculating. Whatever it is that trait is, I respond to it in a certain way. Either I respond to it with hate, or either I respond to it by getting insecure and fearful, or either I respond to it by it brings out my best. So, somebody is very intimidating and threatening. And so then I up my game and I'm trying to outsmart them. And so I'm trying to think 3 steps before them so that I can come out of it better, whatever it is. So it's kind of like we constantly reacting. So now why don't I need to meet different people? Because actually I just need to deal with this trait. And this is another thing we'll notice in our life. So let's say this person that I really, really dislike for whatever reason. Let's say they are dominating and that's why I really, really dislike them. Let's say for some reason, they're no longer in my life. Maybe they move country, maybe they pass away, maybe something. Somebody else with that exact same trait will come into my life. Why? Because it's me learning to deal with that trait. Actually, it's not the person. It's my response to. But very often we aren't able to differentiate between trait and person. And so we couple them together and we're reacting to person. And the thing is, whatever it is that we're reacting in them, they also reacting to something in me. It's not one way. They'll also be reacting to something in me. And so we both end up bringing out the worst in each other. Or we both end up bringing out the best in each other, depending on the nature of the relationship, right? We all have both relationships. Even that person that we really, really, really love, who brings out the best in us, we keep meeting them also, unplanned. You go to one restaurant, they there. What you doing here? Not that I didn't speak to you already 3 hours today, but now you're here, so I'll speak to you another 3 hours. But we didn't plan to meet. It happens all the time or not. Even the person we don't like, we keep bumping into them, no matter how hard we try not to. And there'll be so many flights leaving to that city, but you end up in their flight only. 7 flights leaving a day. What's the chances? But you end up in their flight. Why? Because we have to deal with, and also with their literally, we create our own loka. And then our own loka seems to have its own gravitational pull. So 7.8 billion people on this planet doesn't matter. What matters is my gravitational pull, who I pull close into my life. And that's the thing, we pulling them into our life. So, because we need to learn whatever it is of how to deal with that trait, to deal with that jealousy, to deal with that domination, to deal with that insecurity, to deal with that. That's the journey. That's like the life lesson. So we come into each birth learning to learn certain life lessons. Usually it's not just one, because that's a waste of a birth. It'll usually be 4 or 5. Because we're capable beings. We can do more than one thing, right? Plus we live long enough time for us to learn quite a few lessons. And what's the lessons? It's this. It's this dealing with the trait in the person and dealing with the response within ourselves to that trait. Also, it's finding the trait in us that other people are reacting to. So we could be the one that's bossy, that other people are reacting to our bossiness. So to find that bossiness in us and to be able to nullify it, to be able to get things done without the bossiness. Yeah. And if I'm reacting to bossiness in someone else, to be able to nullify the reactiveness of it within me. So both, we have to be able to, the life lesson is to be able to not react to things within us and things within others. And to act in an appropriate way rather than to react to a particular trait. Okay, Arjuna goes to Dwarka, meets Krishna, tells him, I'm in love with your sister, I would love to marry her. Krishna says, well, Balram wants her to marry Duryodhana, and he's quite fixed on that. And, he's the king. Balram's older than Krishna. Who's Balram? Oh, Balram loved Duryodhana. Balram was Duryodhana's guru. But Duryodhana had learned mace fighting from Balram. Balram was the best fighter, mace fighter in the land. Did I say that last week at Draupadi Swayamvar? The Yadus, which is Krishna's clans, were extremely efficient warriors. So in fact, when when Arjuna was leaving for the house of lakhs, they said goodbye to everyone because they were meant to go live in this house. And so when he said goodbye to Drona, Drona said to him, "You are the most proficient archer in the land, all but one. So you are the best in this whole land, second to only one." And so immediately Krishna said, "Who?" I gave you the answer. Arjuna said, "Who?" Like, who's better than me? And Drona said, "We should never think we're the best. We should always know we're second to someone. But in your case, you actually are second to someone. And the best archer in the land is Krishna." Interestingly, in the entire Mahabharata, you never see Krishna shoot a bow and arrow. Well, here in this one scene, he does a little bit, but he doesn't really shoot bow and arrow. He just uses mantras. So, but obviously Krishna would be the best at anything. And Balram was also very, very proficient. And so Balram was the teacher. He taught Duryodhana. Duryodhana was a really good student. Balaram had favoritism towards Duryodhana. Krishna had favoritism towards Pandavas. Balram had favoritism towards Kauravas. This Balram-Krishna relationship is really interesting because in the Ramayana, Sheshnag comes as Lakshman and comes as the younger brother to Ram. And he's so loyal. He's so disciplined. He's so devout. Like when we do Balviyar camp, and when I ask the kids in Balviyar camp, who do you want to be in the Ramayana? The kids, the boys don't say Ram. They say Lakshman. Maybe it's got a little bit to do with my storytelling skills also. Lakshman's also very like he gets up, and then he's like very, very, very devout. So like yes, Ram, whatever you say, and he's got more, Ram a little bit smiling, doesn't do so much. So, and then when Bhagwan comes as Krishna avatar, Sheshnag comes as Balram. Zero discipline. Well, not zero. And then, but interestingly, he still loves Krishna. He still listens to Krishna, but he has this hang up that he's the older brother, but Krishna is better. And so this thinking in his head that I should have been better, I'm the older brother, gives him this incredible chip on his shoulder, which becomes insecurity, which then makes him, it's really a ladder of fall. And so Balram is your perfect, and why would Bhagwan even do such a thing? Why would Bhagwan create this role of Balram? And the role of Balram is really to teach us that wherever, like whether he's younger, whether he's older, whether he is male, whether he's female, if it's the Lord, he's supreme and I am below. If even for an iota of a second, I think I'm better than, or I'm more capable than, or I'm more important than, it's a downward spiral. We just can't thrive. And we could, Balram could have just surrendered and said, Krishna is God and it doesn't matter that I'm older. I'm just going to listen to everything he says. And the thing is, he does. So we'll find now that, okay, I'll just do this bit quickly so that I can explain Balram better. So Krishna tells Arjuna, you're not going to be able to convince Balram to give you the Subhadra's hand in marriage. So we're going to have to trick him. Lots of trickery. So he says, come dressed as a Brahmana. Balram will invite you to the palace to give you Bhiksha, and Subhadra will serve you, because that's what he does with any Brahmana that comes, because Subhadra should get blessings. As an older brother, that's you. As a fatherly figure, that's what you do. Make sure the kids get lots of blessings. So any saints, Mahatma comes into Dwarka, you invite them home, Subhadra serves and she gets the blessings. So how are you going to meet Subhadra? You dress up like a sannyasi. You wait at this temple. He will come to temple. He'll notice you because you are noticeable. Then he will invite you home for dinner. You come home. Subhadra will serve you. You'll see Subhadra because he hasn't seen Subhadra yet. Who plans all this? Krishna. Then Krishna says, monsoons is starting. Tradition in India is during the monsoon, sannyasis don't travel. So you shouldn't travel. You should stay here only in that disguise and keep coming to the house to visit Balram and Subhadra in your disguise. Then they do this for a long time. So, but Arjuna's dressed as a sannyasi, but he's totally checking out Subhadra. And Subhadra notices, this is not how sannyasis look at me. Women will notice. Men will also notice. When somebody looks at you with desire, you know. Straight away. So she starts noticing. And in one commentary, it says, Arjuna had a very distinct feature which you knew it was Arjuna. He was sarvasakshi, means he was ambidextrous. Arjuna was equally skilled using his left hand as he was using his right hand, which is very few people on this planet. Only about 2 or 3 people on the planet can be as equally skilled in either hand, right? So he used to be able to shoot the arrow with the right hand, in which case he would take the bow like this and then shoot it. But he would also shoot the arrow with this hand. So when he would shoot the arrows are sharp, and he would shoot so fast that it would scratch his back when he was pulling out the arrows from his quiver. And so he had this X on his back, which was scars of arrow marks. And that's one of the telltale signs that this is Arjuna. So one day while she was serving the food to him, I think his Angavastra dropped or something. They would wear cloth. Ooh, sannyasis don't wear stitched clothes, they wear cloth, right? So it's literally wrapped around him. So it fell. She saw so now she knew it was Arjuna and not some sannyasi. So they having full romance through their eyes. And then Krishna goes to visit Subhadra and says, do you really want to marry Duryodhana? She makes a face like, do I want to marry Duryodhana? And then Krishna says, what about Arjuna? Would you want to marry Arjuna? And she's like, And then Krishna is like, yes, I know. And so they come up with this. So Subhadra wants to marry. Arjuna wants to marry. So Krishna goes and tells Arjuna, on this day, there's this event. All the Yadavas will be there. You come in a chariot and just kidnap Subhadra. Very often marriage would take place this way. Remember, Bhishma did the same with Amba, Ambika, Ambalika. This is why I said this women's right was very ambiguous in those days. Was considered acceptable behavior. In this case, Subhadra was happy to be kidnapped by Arjuna. But still, but this was all done because Balram wouldn't have approved, and Krishna didn't want to openly contradict Balram. So Arjuna comes, he's shaven, he's got his crown because the 1 year is over, the exile is over. He's dressed in his princely garbs. He's using Krishna's chariot only. He rides the chariot. He gets to where Subhadra is. He pulls Subhadra in the chariot. He races off. The Yadavas are furious. How can he steal Subhadra right in front of our very noses? They say we should wage war against Indraprastha and the Pandavas. So all this commotion going on, all the Yadavas talking, nobody notices. Krishna is not saying a word. Balram notices Krishna is not saying a word. Balram hushes the assembly and says, whatever Krishna says, we will do. So here you see Balram totally accepts Krishna and will listen to what Krishna says. Even when the war is waged, Balram didn't want to fight on the side of the Pandavas because he was very fond of Duryodhana. But he would never fight against Krishna. So he doesn't fight with Duryodhana. So that love for Krishna is still there. But that feeling of I'm older, I should get the respect, just totally ruins everything. And so in our devotion too, this is the whole idea of Balram. In our devotion, if even that just that little bit thought comes that I deserve respect or I should be given attention or if I should be given importance, what I say should be considered, just totally ruins our devotion. The devotion, it has to be, Krishna is absolute, whatever he says goes, and there's nothing more that follows. But with Balram, this followed. When he was Lakshman, he was younger brother, nothing followed. Ram is right, Ram is right. As Balram, Krishna is right, but I'm the older brother. It's sad. We see that even with Dhritarashtra and Pandu. Dhritarashtra couldn't be the king because he was blind, but he's the older brother. And so he always feels he has a right. Yeah. Why? Because he's the older brother. Otherwise, why? The kingdom was Pandu's. No, but I'm the older brother. Right? We get this. What an interesting criteria. Why am I worthy? Because of my birth position? Like, how does that make me worthy? And yet, this is our criteria. Why should I get respect? The criteria will be something so nonsensical, illogical. Because I am older, I should get respect. Or because of gender, I should get respect. Because I am, all of us, we will suddenly, because I've done so much. And actually, have I done so much? Sometimes, maybe they have done a lot. But why are we doing it? So this need for I can't find the exact English word, but man. What's the exact English word for man? Respect? Doesn't sound. Yeah, like respect, acknowledgement, attention. Those are the words I've been using. Position, right? It's a position. Yeah, it's definitely pride. Because I am older, I deserve. You could even say it today, the word we use is entitled. We feel entitled to getting our way, being given importance. It's my right that I deserve. This feeling creeps in. Absolutely every single one of us, this feeling will creep in. We might use the word I deserve. I deserve to be. But actually it's an entitled. So on the spiritual journey, there's just no room for this. Zero, zero, zero room for this. What do I deserve? Absolutely nothing. If I get, very good. If I don't get, very good. Will we feel hurt if we don't get? Possibly. So Balram says, listen to Krishna. Krishna says, Arjuna's done the right thing. Arjuna didn't want us to have to pay dowry. And so he took her by force, which means we don't have to pay dowry. He's a worthy husband for Subhadra because he's undisputably the best warrior of the land. And then one other reason he gives. And then Krishna says, quickly send message to tell him to come back so that we can have a proper wedding. So that we don't look bad that he stole Subhadra from us. We should also keep our face by having a proper ceremony. So that's exactly what's done. A proper ceremony is had and Arjuna marries Subhadra. And so now Krishna is an alliance to the Pandavas through marriage, which is what Krishna wanted. And Balram wanted to be an alliance to the Kauravas. But only what Krishna wants happens. Vichara Balram. Every time he wants something, it doesn't happen. But the thing is, he'll want something. It will be opposing to what Krishna wants. And then when Krishna gets what he wants, he accepts. Sometimes we do this in our lives. We want something, it opposes what the divine will is, then we accept. But it's a very painful process. Just start by saying, okay, Krishna, what you want? Why I should have my own agenda, which is not going to happen. Then I get heartbroken. Then I have to bring myself to accept what Krishna wants. Hi. That's why Balaram was so exhausted, right? I've already mentioned this. Balaram is an alcoholic. He's incapable of running the Dwarka. Rukmani runs Dwarka. Balaram's alcoholism doesn't allow him to be able to rule Dwarka, even though he's the elder brother and rightful king. His own alcoholism doesn't allow him to rule Dwarka. When Krishna is not in Dwarka, Rukmani runs it. So this is what happens. We want, then we don't get what we want because it's not as per the divine will. Then we feel very broken. We feel very disappointed, very dejected. Then we have to eventually accept what the divine will is. But by that time, we're so exhausted. So that's why usually when I'm teaching Balvihar and we talk about when we ask God for something, I'll say, ask. If you want to ask God for something, ask. But add, only if it's good for me, and I will accept what you decide. So set yourself up from the beginning itself. Yeah. I want whatever, chocolate cake, but only if it's good for me. And if I don't get it, I'll be fine with that as well. I want whatever, marriage, kids, move country, money, wealth, name, fame, health, anything, whatever. I want da, 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 but only if it's good for me. And if I don't get it, make me good with that also. Our prayer shouldn't be, give me. We're so demanding. We're so entitled. We're such spoiled brats. When we see kids talk to their parents that way, we look at them and thinking, this is not how kids should talk to parents. Yet that's how we talk to the Lord. Give me now what I want. No, no, no. Then we end up like Balaram. Because Krishna just smiles. He does his own thing. If you make it hard for him to do what he wants, he'll use whatever way. Arjuna disguised, came and sat in Balram's house, ate, flirted with Subhadra royally for 4 months. Then stole her and took her off on a chariot. Balram didn't stand a chance. Poor guy thought the whole time he was in control. Okay, we'll pause here. Any questions? Online people, any questions? And Subhadra and Arjuna cousins? I don't think Subhadra was born to, well, yeah, she would have been. They would have been second cousins, right? So Subhadra had one parent difference, either Vasudev or Devaki. Vasudev and Devaki had Krishna. Subhadra only shared one parent with Krishna. I'm not sure, I can't remember which one it was. Anyway, royalty married family in those days. I think for as long as royalty existed, they married family. Vasudev and Rohini. Yeah, so Vasudev was Kunti's brother. So yes, Subhadra is Arjuna's cousin. Yeah, they would be first cousins. We'll conclude. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukha bhag bhavet, asato ma satkamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.